There are mornings when we wake up to the noise of the city, yet inside something feels heavy, like yesterday's thoughts never truly fell asleep. A message left unanswered, a careless word that stung deeper than it should have, a task unfinished. All of it drifts through the heart like an invisible wind, stirring everything quiet inside, and we find ourselves asking, how can I stay calm in the storm of everyday life? How can my heart stand still like a mountain when everything keeps moving? The Buddha once said that suffering is like the wind. Sometimes it passes gently, barely touching the leaves. Sometimes it roars like a storm. But the mountain never runs from it, nor does it fight against it. The mountain simply allows the wind to pass through. It isn't indifferent, it just understands impermanence. The wind comes, the wind goes. Nothing stays forever. That simple understanding is the key to peace. In our daily lives, we often react more than we observe. A harsh word comes and we rush to defend ourselves. A misunderstanding arises and we hurry to explain. A failure strikes and we collapse as if it would last forever. But the truth is, pain never stays on its own. It's our attachment that turns it into a storm. When we hold the wind, it becomes a chain. When we let go, it's just wind again, passing by and disappearing. There's an old story of a farmer who lived at the foot of a mountain. Every storm season, strong winds blew trees bent, and his neighbors panicked, running to tie everything down. But the old man sat quietly in his wooden house, sipping hot tea, listening to the wind whistle through the cracks of the door. When asked why he wasn't afraid, he smiled and said, "The wind doesn't wish to harm us. It only passes through. If I tremble, I make myself suffer. If I let it go, I remain whole." That simple wisdom echoes the heart of the Buddha's teaching. In this rushing world, we too can learn to be a mountain even for a moment. When the wind of worry comes, instead of reacting, pause. Take a deep breath in. Slowly release it. Imagine yourself standing on a high peak wind from every direction brushing against your skin, yet within you stillness. Just one mindful breath, and you realize the storm is never greater than the sky inside your heart. Many believe peace only exists when life is calm, when there's no noise, no storm. But the Buddha taught that peace isn't found in the absence of wind, it's found in learning to stand still within it. Think of an autumn lake. When the air is calm, it mirrors the sky perfectly. But when the wind blows, the reflection shatters into ripples. The sky hasn't changed, the lake has, and so it is with our mind. One day, a disciple asked the Buddha Master, "How can I stop being angry when my heart is full of pain?" The Buddha smiled gently and said, "Look at your anger like a passing cloud. It comes, it goes. It is not you. You are the sky. Anger is only the cloud drifting by." At first it sounds poetic, but when you truly observe your emotions, you begin to see the truth in it. Every feeling is just a breeze. If you don't hold on, it fades as quickly as clouds after rain. Try just once to look at your suffering the way you would watch a yellow leaf in the wind. It trembles, spins, and finally lands softly on the ground. You could cry for its fall, or smile, knowing the leaf is beginning a new journey, becoming soil, nurturing new life. Pain is the same. If you cling, it hurts. If you let go, it transforms into wisdom. In the Dhammapada, the Buddha said, "Peace comes when the mind is unmoved by gain or loss." It's not easy to stay unmoved. But every time a storm rises, if you can remember, you are the mountain, not the branch, you will stand stronger. Branches tremble, but mountains endure. And each day, even 1 minute of returning to your breath is one step closer to becoming that mountain of peace. Life is a river. You cannot stop the flow. You cannot order the wind to rest, but you can loosen your grip on the oar. You can allow the current to carry you. You can let the wind pass through. And then peace won't feel so far away, because peace is not something you seek, it's something you return to. So if today you feel weary because of a word, a loss, or a disappointment, sit down for a moment. Take a deep breath. Let your breath become the sail that brings you back to the present. Close your eyes and see it clearly. Within you stands a mountain deep green and unmoving beneath the open sky. The wind blows, the clouds drift, but the mountain remains. And so do you, whole, calm, unshaken. Peace isn't found in a world without storms. It's found in the quiet strength of the heart that learns to stand still as the wind passes by. There are days when you wake up and nothing seems wrong, yet something inside feels strangely unsettled. The sun still rises, the birds still sing. The breeze is soft, but within you a quiet heaviness lingers like a cloud that refuses to move. And you realize not all storms come from outside. Sometimes they rise from memories that haven't faded, from wounds that never healed, from unspoken expectations that keep echoing in the heart. The mind is like a still lake. It doesn't take much to disturb it, just one small pebble, and the surface ripples endlessly. Sometimes it isn't a great tragedy that shakes us, but something tiny, a careless word, a delayed reply, a passing look. Yet that small ripple can grow into waves that shake the entire lake. The Buddha once said that suffering does not come from what happens to us, but from the way we cling to what happens. Someone's words are just sound air moving through space. But when we grab hold of those words, add stories, judgments, and hurt, we turn sound into a knife and wound ourselves with it. It's like a candle in the wind. The flame only goes out when it's weak. But if you keep it strong, the wind can only make it dance brighter. The problem was never the wind, it's how we guard the flame. There's an old Zen story about a man rowing across a foggy river. Suddenly, another boat crashes into his. He shouts in anger, ready to fight. But as the fog clears, he sees that the other boat is empty. And instantly, his anger vanishes. The monk who told this story said most of our pain doesn't come from the event itself. It comes from believing someone meant to hurt us. If we could see life like that empty boat, we would have no one left to blame, and our hearts would be free. In daily life, small wins often become great storms. A mother exhausted after a long day hears her child complain that dinner doesn't taste good, and her heart trembles. A hard-working employee is told by his boss that he could do better, and he loses sleep for nights. The words themselves were just wind, but because we hold them too tightly, the wind becomes thunder. The Buddha said, "Let your mind be like the sky, unbound by sound, sense, sight, or thought." The sky is vast, clouds come and go, yet the sky is never disturbed. Our hearts can be like that too. But most of us live like dry fields covered in fallen leaves. When the wind blows, dust rises and chaos begins. It's not the wind's fault. It's because we've carried too much that was never meant to be kept. Old sadness, unfulfilled desires, comparisons, regrets, they fill our hearts until the smallest gust sends everything swirling. Once I met an old man who lived in a small wooden house deep in the forest. He spent his days tending a tiny garden, brewing tea, and listening to the birds. When I asked if he ever felt lonely or sad, he smiled and said, "Of course I do. Sadness comes, but it leaves like the wind. If I open the door and let it pass, only the scent of flowers remains. His words were simple, but they moved through me like a soft breeze after a long summer heat. Peace, I realized, isn't the absence of sadness. It's the art of letting sadness pass through without clinging to it. Some people think peace comes from avoiding everything that causes pain, from running away to quiet places where no one can disturb them. But mountains don't choose where to stand. They face wind and rain year after year, yet remain unmoved. Peace isn't about avoiding the storm. It's about growing roots deep enough that no storm can uproot you. When the wind comes, observe it. When it goes, release it. Praise and blame are just echoes. Success and failure are just passing clouds. Loss is not the end. It's part of the cycle that allows new life to grow. So when your heart feels shaken, ask yourself, how strong is this wind really? Will it still be here in a year? Even in a month? Most of the time, the answer is no. So why let the wind steal today's peace? Sometimes all it takes is one slow breath, one steady step, one clear glance inward to remember you can be the mountain. The wind will keep blowing, but you remain silent, kind, grounded, and in that stillness, something beautiful happens. Your calm becomes a refuge for others. People who stand near you will feel safer. Your peace will begin to ripple outward, like a quiet lake, reflecting the sky for anyone who looks into it. That is the power of an undisturbed mind, not only to calm itself, but to soothe the world around it. Peace isn't a wall you build to hide behind. It's a light you carry into every storm. There are mornings when you wake up to a day that seems ordinary, yet something inside you feels heavy for no reason. The sky is bright, the air is calm, the world moves as usual, but your heart carries a quiet shadow, as if a cloud has drifted in and forgotten to leave. And you realize sometimes suffering doesn't come from the world outside. It rises quietly from within, from memories that haven't dissolved, from old wounds that never truly healed, from silent hopes that kept waiting in the dark. The mind is like a clear lake. It doesn't take a stone to stir it sometimes, just a whisper of wind. The ripples don't last long, but because we keep staring at them, thinking, analyzing, and reliving, they turn into waves. And soon, we forget that the lake was ever calm at all. The Buddha once said, "People are not disturbed by things, but by the thoughts they attach to those things." A word once spoken, an event long gone, they exist only in memory. But we keep digging them up, decorating them with meaning, replaying them again and again, until they turn into chains that bind our hearts. It's like holding a burning coal and wondering why our hands are in pain. I once heard a story of a farmer who carried 2 water jars up a mountain every morning. One jar was perfect, the other had a small crack. Every day, by the time he reached the top half, the water in the cracked jar had leaked away. For weeks, he was angry, believing his effort was wasted. But one day, he noticed a trail of wildflowers blooming along the path where the water had dripped. Then he understood the crack had been watering the earth all along. Sometimes our own cracks, our imperfections, are like that broken jar. They may leak, they may ache, but they can also give life to something beautiful if we stop judging them and start seeing them differently. Pain, anger, and loss are the drops that fall from the cracked jar of the heart. If we only see them as loss, we'll forever feel broken. But if we see them as the source of new life, we'll find meaning, even in what hurts. Every wound can become a seed of understanding, every scar, a doorway to compassion. The Buddha often compared the mind to a garden. If we only water the flowers of desire but neglect the weeds of ignorance one day, the weeds will take over. The goal is not to destroy every weed overnight, but to tend the garden patiently, pulling one weed at a time, planting seeds of awareness each day. Slowly, peace will bloom where chaos once grew. So when old winds rise from your memories, don't fight them. Sit down, place your hand over your heart, breathe deeply and whisper, "Ah, the wind is blowing inside me." Just noticing is enough. The act of awareness is already the beginning of peace, because the moment you see the wind, it starts to lose its strength, and soon you'll realize the sky inside you was never gone. It was only hidden for a while. Life is a current that never flows backward. You can't return to yesterday, and tomorrow hasn't arrived. The only choice you truly have is this. Will you let your mind be carried away by the current? Or will you stand still and watch the water flow? When you choose stillness, you begin to hear something subtle and profound, the voice of your own heart. It doesn't shout. It doesn't rush. It whispers gently. Peace is already here. Stop searching for it elsewhere. The journey to a calm heart isn't a sprint. It's a slow walk through the forest of your own mind. Each step asks for patience. Each breath asks for presence. And the deeper you go, the more you realize the wind was never your enemy. It was your teacher showing you how to sway without breaking, how to let go without falling apart. Because the truth is simple. Peace is not about controlling the wind. It's about learning to dance with it. There are moments when we walk through crowded streets, yet feel utterly alone. The city moves around us, people laughing, lights, flashing music playing. But inside, there's only silence, as if the world no longer reaches us. It's not that life has lost its color. It's that too much dust has settled on the heart. The Buddha once said, "The mind is like a mirror. When dust gathers, it doesn't lose its ability to reflect. It just needs to be cleaned. But instead of wiping the dust away, we often hide it. We pile more thoughts on top of it. Anger, jealousy, regret, and slowly, we forget that the mirror was ever bright." I once met a young man who constantly compared himself to others. No matter what he achieved, he felt small. He looked at everyone and saw what he lacked. He was trapped in a maze of not enough. But during a volunteer trip to a mountain village, he spent an afternoon playing with children on a dusty road. He had no money, no tools, no plans, only laughter and a few simple games. When he saw their joy, something shifted inside him. He realized that even without perfection, he could still bring light. That day, he finally understood what the Buddha meant when he said, "A person's worth is not measured by what they possess, but by the heart with which they live." We suffer so much because we keep comparing ourselves, our paths, our pace, our pain. Standing in a field of flowers, we forget to notice the one blooming right beside us because our eyes are fixed on the one across the fence. But no flower tries to become another. It just opens when it's ready. It doesn't rush spring or fear autumn. It simply fulfills its purpose to bloom in its own season. And so should we. We chase applause. We chase recognition. We chase the reflection of worth in someone else's eyes. And then we wonder why peace feels so far away. But applause has always been temporary. It fades like the echo of a bell. True peace begins when you stop performing and simply start being. The Buddha once said, "The one who knows contentment sleeps peacefully upon the ground, while the one who never knows enough tosses even in a golden bed." Contentment doesn't mean giving up on life. It means realizing that the joy you're chasing may already be here in the warmth of sunlight on your face, in the quiet breath between two thoughts, in the smile you forgot to return. If one day you feel small, step outside at night. Look up. The stars are countless. Some shine fiercely, some barely flicker, but every one of them belongs to the sky. None of them compete yet. Together they create beauty beyond measure. You don't have to be the brightest light to have meaning. Even a small star can guide a lost traveler home. You are like that star. You don't need to shine louder than anyone else. You just need to shine in your own way. Sometimes the softest light is the one that heals the most. The moment you stop comparing, the weight begins to lift. You no longer chase approval. You no longer fear silence. You begin to see that your value was never something to be earned. It was something you were born with. And when that realization settles deep within you, your heart becomes lighter, your steps softer. Life feels less like a race and more like a walk through a garden. You start to notice the fragrance, the colors, the wind brushing against your skin. Peace grows in that awareness. It doesn't come from having more. It comes from finally seeing that you already have enough. When you live from that truth, the world doesn't change, but the way you see it does. And sometimes, that's all it takes to be free. There comes a point in life when we begin to realize that the harder we hold on, the heavier everything becomes. We hold our fears close, our wounds closer, and wonder why the journey feels so exhausting. It's like walking for miles with a stone in your pocket so small you think it doesn't matter, yet it slowly bends your spine. Letting go doesn't mean losing. It means remembering that you were never meant to carry everything. The Buddha once said, "The world is like a flowing river. Those who cling to the shore suffer, while those who learn to float are carried peacefully by the current." We suffer because we try to control the flow, because we mistake holding on for strength. But true strength is softer. It's the courage to release what no longer serves us. Once, while traveling through a mountain path, I met a child carrying a bundle of firewood. It was almost too heavy for him, yet he struggled forward with all his strength. When he finally reached his home, he dropped it onto the ground. The sound echoed through the valley, and in that moment, his face lit up, not from exhaustion, but from relief. Watching him, I thought how many of us carry our own bundles like that. Memories, grudges, regrets, never realizing we could put them down at any time. Letting go isn't forgetting. It's not pretending the pain never existed. It's simply allowing what has already ended to rest where it belongs behind you. I once saw a fisherman repairing his net by the river. When I asked why he cut away so many knots, he said, "A tangled net catches nothing." His words lingered with me. How often do we try to hold everything together? Our relationships, our past, our pride, only to find that nothing new can enter because our hearts are too tangled. The Buddha compared attachment to a raft. You use it to cross the river, but once you reach the other side, you must leave it behind. Carrying it further only weighs you down. We build rafts out of people, ideas, and versions of ourselves that once kept us safe. But safety becomes a prison when we refuse to move forward. Letting go isn't a single act. It's a rhythm, a slow exhale after holding your breath for too long. It's a soft surrender to the truth that life keeps flowing, whether we cling or not. Sometimes it's as simple as releasing a word we never said, forgiving someone who will never apologize, or accepting that some stories end without closure. not because they weren't meaningful, but because their meaning has already been lived. Letting go is an art of trust, trusting that what's meant to stay will stay. Trusting that emptiness is not loss, it's space. Space for new light, new love, new peace to enter. I once met a woman who kept a box of letters she never opened again. "They remind me of who I was," she said. "But every time I read them, I stopped becoming who I'm meant to be." One day, she set the box in a quiet garden, lit a small flame, and watched it burn. The wind carried the ashes into the air, and for the first time in years, she smiled. Sometimes we must let the past rise like smoke so the present can finally breathe. Letting go is not an ending. It's a homecoming. It's the return to a lighter self, one that can move freely again. And once you begin to release what weighs you down, something miraculous happens. You begin to hear life again. The sound of the wind through the trees, the laughter of strangers, the quiet rhythm of your own breath. Because peace doesn't come when life is perfect. It comes when your hands are open enough to let it in. When we begin to let go, space opens within us. And in that space, something beautiful begins to bloom, the ability to listen. Not the kind of listening that waits for a pause to reply, but the kind that opens the heart so fully that silence becomes its own language. Listening is not about the ear, it's about presence. When the mind stops trying to fix or judge, the heart begins to hear. The Buddha once said, "Those who truly listen can dissolve all conflict." Because anger is like fire, it grows when fed, but fades when met with calm understanding. To listen with compassion is like pouring cool water onto burning coals. The flame still exists, but it no longer harms. One evening, I saw a father sitting on the porch with his son. The boy was angry, shouting his words, trembling with hurt. The father didn't interrupt. He simply sat still, eyes soft, breathing slowly. When the boy finally fell silent, the father placed a hand on his shoulder and said quietly, "I don't have the right words, but I'm here. Keep talking if you need to." And something shifted. The air between them softened. The boy began to cry, not from pain, but from being seen. That is the power of listening to make another soul feel visible. When we listen without judgment, we become like a still pond, reflecting not only the sky, but the shape of every tree and cloud above it. The pond doesn't choose what to reflect. It simply allows everything to appear as it is. In that stillness, truth reveals itself. Understanding is like light in a dark room. You don't have to chase away the darkness. You only need to light a single candle. And sometimes that candle is as small as a nod, a quiet "I see you," or a silence that holds someone gently when words can't. To understand another, we must first understand ourselves. How often have we silenced our own pain because we feared it would make us weak? How many times have we turned away from our inner voice pretending it wasn't crying for help? We cannot listen deeply to others if we do not know how to listen to our own heartbeat. When you sit quietly breathing slowly, you begin to hear that hidden rhythm, the soft sound of life moving through you. It's not dramatic or loud. It's steady, ancient, and kind. It tells you, you are still here. You are still whole. The act of listening transforms silence from emptiness into sanctuary. It's no longer a void to escape, but a home to return to. Within that silence, your heart stretches, and suddenly there's room again for forgiveness, for compassion, for peace. The Buddha taught that understanding is the seed of compassion. When you truly see why someone suffers, anger can no longer take root. You can't hate what you understand, so listen, Not to agree, not to win, not to respond, but to feel. When you listen deeply enough, even pain begins to speak softly. It tells you what it needs, and in that moment, healing begins. True peace isn't found in avoiding noise, it's found in hearing the music that lives beneath it. Because even in the storm, there is rhythm. Even in sorrow, there is a note of truth waiting to be heard. And when you finally hear it, you realize you were never separate from the world at all. You were simply too loud inside to notice the harmony that was always there. Compassion begins where judgment ends. It's not pity, and it's not charity. It's the quiet recognition that every being, no matter how hardened, is fighting a battle we cannot see. The Buddha once said, "Just as the sun shines upon both lotus and weed, compassion makes no distinction. The sun doesn't choose where to shine. It touches the mountain peak and the muddy path alike, asking nothing in return. So too should our kindness flow, not as an obligation, but as a natural expression of being alive." True compassion doesn't need an audience. It exists in small, invisible gestures, a hand resting gently on a trembling shoulder, a warm bowl of soup left quietly by a sick friend's door, a smile that asks for nothing, but gives everything. Once in a remote village, an old woman carried water every morning from a stream miles away. She filled a clay jar and poured it into the cracks of the dry earth near her home. "Why waste water on dead soil?" a traveler asked. She smiled and said, "Because someday the rain will come, and when it does, the ground will be ready." That is compassion. Giving where life seems absent, loving where love seems undeserved. Compassion doesn't mean you never feel pain. It means you let pain soften you instead of harden you. When you open your heart to another's suffering, you're not losing energy. You're remembering your shared humanity. We are all drops of the same ocean, different forms, different journeys, but one essence. The Buddha taught that hatred is not ended by more hatred, only by understanding. Anger is like dry wood. It burns until nothing remains. But compassion is like a stream flowing through fire, cooling everything it touches. You don't fight darkness with darkness. You light a candle and let its glow spread. One day, a monk was asked how to cultivate compassion. He replied, "When you see someone suffering, don't rush to fix them. First breathe, then imagine yourself in their place. Feel what they feel. Only then will your action come from love, not ego." Because the difference between pity and compassion is the difference between standing above someone and standing beside them. To love without condition doesn't mean to accept harm. It means to wish peace even to those who hurt you, knowing that a heart filled with bitterness cannot heal another. Compassion is not weakness. It is the greatest courage. It is standing in the fire and choosing not to burn others. When compassion grows, it changes the way you see everything. You stop labeling people as good or bad. You begin to see that every cruelty comes from pain. Every harsh word hides fear. Every closed heart was once open. And suddenly, forgiveness feels less like surrender and more like freedom. Imagine standing in a desert. The air is dry, the ground cracked. Then without warning, a small stream begins to flow, weaving its way through the emptiness. Life follows. That water plants sprout, birds return, color fills the world again. That's what compassion does to the human heart. It brings life where there was only dust. And when you practice it often, something miraculous happens. You begin to heal without even trying. Because in giving kindness, you receive peace. Compassion is not a path you walk toward others. It's a circle that begins and ends within yourself. Each time you forgive, each time you understand, Each time you choose gentleness over anger, you return to the most natural state of your being, the one made of light. So be like the sun. Shine even when the world forgets to notice. Be like the stream. Flow even when the earth seems too dry to receive you. Because compassion doesn't wait for the perfect moment, it creates it. Everything changes. That is the only truth we can never escape. The Buddha once said, "All that arises will fade, all that blooms will fall." Yet we still cling to moments as if they could be kept forever, like trying to hold sunlight in our hands. But the tighter we grasp, the faster it slips through our fingers. Look at a flower. It never argues with the wind. It opens when its time dances briefly in the sun, and when the petals fall, it doesn't mourn. It simply returns to the soil, knowing its purpose is complete. We too are part of that same rhythm, born, growing, changing, letting go. But unlike the flower, we resist. We fear endings. We fight decay. We cling to what was beautiful, forgetting that every ending is also a beginning, wearing a different face. I once met a man who kept an old watch in his pocket. Its hands were missing, but it still ticked faintly inside. When I asked why he carried it, he said, "Because it reminds me that time doesn't need to move for life to happen. The present moment is always here, waiting to be lived." That is mindfulness, to be awake within each breath, to realize that now is not a passing point between past and future. It is the whole of existence itself. When you drink tea, just drink tea. When you walk, just walk. When you breathe, just breathe. Because when you are truly present, even the smallest act becomes sacred. We often think peace is found in escaping time and reaching a place where nothing changes. But true peace is found in accepting that everything changes and learning to move with it gracefully. Like the tide that rises and falls, life has its own rhythm. Joy and sorrow, gain and loss, arrival and departure, they are all waves on the same sea. If you stand firm against them, you drown. If you float with them, you discover that even the sea is gentle when you stop resisting. Mindfulness is the art of touching life deeply while it happens. It is noticing the warmth of sunlight on your face, the sound of your own breath, the scent of rain on the earth, and realizing that these fleeting sensations are enough. Because the present moment, when fully lived, contains eternity. One evening, I watched the sunset fade behind the mountains. The sky turned from gold to rose, from rose to violet, and finally to quiet blue. For a while I felt sad, knowing the light would soon be gone. But as night came, the first star appeared, and in that single shimmer, I understood nothing truly disappears. It only transforms its form of light. We mourn endings because we forget they are just transitions. The flower becomes soil, the wave becomes mist, the day becomes night, and then returns again. To live mindfully is to bow to this constant dance of birth and death in every moment. Every breath you take is a reminder of that cycle. Inhale, life enters. Exhale, it leaves. You don't cling to the breath you've taken, and yet you trust the next one will come. That is faith, the quiet kind, the kind that doesn't need proof, only presence. The Buddha taught that a mindful heart is like the morning dew, clear, gentle, fleeting. When the sun rises, the dew disappears, but not in sadness. It simply becomes part of the light. If you can live like that, lightly, openly aware, then each moment becomes a prayer. Every sound becomes a bell, awakening you back to now. The world stops being something to chase and becomes something to touch softly with your awareness. Mindfulness doesn't take you away from the world. It brings you closer to it. When you walk, the ground beneath your feet is no longer ordinary. It's alive, whispering that you belong here. When you breathe, the air no longer feels invisible. It becomes the bridge between your body and the universe. And when you open your eyes to this truth, you realize nothing is missing. This moment, this very breath is enough. Freedom is not something we find, it's something we uncover. It has always been there quietly, waiting beneath the layers of fear, memory, and expectation. The Buddha once said, "You are your own jailer, and you are your own key." We spend so much of our lives trying to escape the cage, never realizing that the door was never locked. It's only our hands that keep holding the bars. Letting go is not about running away. It's about finally standing still long enough to see that you were never trapped. I once watched a child playing with a kite. The wind was strong that day, and the string trembled in his hands. For a while, he pulled tightly, trying to control its flight. The kite wobbled and dipped, almost crashing to the ground. But then he loosened his grip, and suddenly the kite soared higher than ever, dancing freely in the sky. That's the secret of freedom. The moment you stop controlling, life begins to flow. The mind loves to hold on. It clings to the idea of who we are, who we should be, what should have happened. But the tighter the grip, the smaller the world becomes. To be free is to release that grip, to trust that even if you don't hold the sky still holds you. Once in a monastery at the edge of a forest, a monk kept a small bird in a bamboo cage. Every morning, he would feed it gently, talk to it softly, and watch it sing. One day, another monk asked, "Why do you keep it trapped if you love it so much?" The monk said nothing, but that evening, he opened the cage door. The bird hesitated for a moment, then spread its wings and vanished into the fading light. The next morning, the monk woke to the sound of birdsong outside his window. He smiled and whispered, "It came back, but now it sings because it wants to." That is the difference between love that possesses and love that frees. And that's also the difference between living in fear and living in truth. Freedom doesn't come from adding more, it comes from subtracting what is false. It's not found in perfection, but in release. Not in becoming more, but in becoming less. Less rigid, less afraid, less attached to the shape of things that were never meant to last. There's a quiet kind of freedom that arrives the moment you stop arguing with reality. When you stop saying, "It shouldn't be this way," and instead whisper, "Maybe this is exactly how it's meant to be." That's when your heart opens. That's when peace enters. Freedom is not loud. It doesn't come with applause or celebration. It's the silent exhale after holding your breath for years. It's walking barefoot through the grass after carrying shoes that never fit. It's realizing that the horizon you were chasing was already inside you. The Buddha said that enlightenment is like waking from a dream, not because the world disappears, but because you finally see it as it is. In that awakening, you discover that even the shadows have beauty, because they show you where the light is. You no longer fight the darkness. You understand that it was never your enemy. It was the background that allowed the stars to shine. When you truly let go, you become light. Not fragile, but weightless. Not indifferent, but vast. You walk differently. You speak slower. You smile for no reason, not because life is perfect, but because it doesn't need to be. You stop chasing meaning because every breath becomes meaningful on its own. Freedom is not a destination, it's the way you travel. It's not a goal, it's a rhythm. And when you live in that rhythm, You realize the cage was never made of iron, but of thought, and the sky you longed for has always been within you. So breathe, loosen your hands, let the wind take what it must. You will not lose anything real. You will only lose what was keeping you small. There is a kind of peace that doesn't come after the storm, it exists within it. It doesn't wait for silence. It listens deeply enough to hear stillness inside the noise. That peace is not given by the world. It's remembered from within. The Buddha once said, "There is no path to peace. Peace itself is the path." And perhaps that is the greatest truth of all. We've been walking in circles, searching for something that has always been under our feet. Peace is not an achievement. It's a return to what we were before the world told us who we should be. A return to the gentle awareness that watches the rise and fall of every breath without clinging, without fear. One quiet night, I sat by an old well behind a monastery. The moon was full, and its reflection trembled softly on the water's surface. When a breeze passed, the image shattered, but when the air grew still again, the moon reappeared exactly as before. And in that moment, I understood the moon never left the water, simply forgot how to be still. Our minds are like that water. When stirred by thoughts, they lose the reflection of truth. But when calm, they reveal the whole sky within them. To find peace, you don't have to go anywhere. You only need to stop running. When you stop chasing meaning, life reveals its meaning by itself. When you stop reaching for light, you realize you are light. The world outside is full of movement, voices, screens, clocks, but beneath it all, there is a silence that never fades. It's there between every heartbeat, between every word. It's not empty. It's alive. And when you touch it, you touch eternity. Sometimes peace comes as a whisper, sometimes as a single breath that feels fuller than a lifetime of searching. And sometimes it comes like the sound of a distant bell, soft, steady, calling you home. Every night the monks in the temple strike the bell 3 times. The sound travels through the mountains, echoing into the dark valleys. It doesn't rush, it doesn't demand, it just is. Those who hear it stop for a moment. They breathe. And for that brief pause, the world returns to its natural rhythm. The bell doesn't end the night, it reminds you that the night is already peaceful. That's what awareness does. It doesn't change what is. It changes how deeply you see it. Awakening isn't about becoming something more. It's about shedding everything false. The noise, the striving, the self-judgment, all of it melts away until what remains is simple presence. A presence that doesn't need to prove or perform, just to be. In the stillness of that being, you discover that everything you were chasing, love, peace, belonging, was never missing. It was always quietly waiting behind your breath, like the moon's reflection on water, like a candle's glow in the dark, like the sound of your own heartbeat at dawn. It has always been there. You just needed to look without looking, listen without seeking, breathe without effort. So now when life feels too heavy, close your eyes. Listen. The world is still humming. The wind still carries songs through the trees. The earth still turns softly beneath your feet. You belong to all of it. Let your heart rest like a traveler who has finally come home. You don't need to fix the path or control the sky or silence the waves. Just sit by the river of your breath and let it carry you. Because peace isn't found by reaching for the horizon. It's found by standing still and realizing the horizon has always been within you.